The first thing I noticed when I stepped outside that morning was a neon pink Kia Soul parked smack in the middle of my driveway. It wasn't mine. I had no clue who it belonged to, and to top it off, it was positioned so perfectly, so infuriatingly, that it completely blocked my garage. I couldn't even get my truck out if I tried. I took a deep breath, counted to 5, and told myself maybe this was just a mix-up. But deep down, I knew better. I turned around, and there she was, standing on the sidewalk like she'd been waiting for me, arms crossed, her usual smug grin plastered across her overly made-up face. Linda, the self-proclaimed ruler of our HOA, tilted her head and waved at the Kia like it was a prized exhibit. "You like it?" she chirped. I blinked. "What?" "The new community parking initiative. We had our HOA meeting last night. If you'd shown up, you'd know that underused private driveways are now fair game for overflow parking. It's in the handbook." I stared at her, then at the car, then back at her, my brain struggling to wrap itself around the madness. "You're saying you just took my driveway?" "Oh, it's not just you," she said, flinging her hands around like she was sprinkling magic dust. "It's a group effort. We've got so many visitors, and it's only fair everyone pitches in." I dragged a hand down my face. "Linda, that's not how property works." She grinned even wider, and I swear I could feel my blood pressure spiking. "Oh, but it is. We dug into the HOA agreement's fine print. You signed up for reasonable community accommodations when you moved in. That includes shared parking rights on unused spaces." I pointed at my garage, which I couldn't even reach. "It's not unused, it's my damn driveway." She clicked her tongue like I was a kid who didn't get the rules. "Well, you weren't using it right now, were you?" I'd never wanted to launch someone into orbit so badly in my life. "Move the car, Linda." "Can't," she said brightly. "It's the Wilsons' nieces. She's visiting from out of town, sweet girl. She'll be here for 2 weeks." I inhaled deeply, fighting the urge to lose it. "So I can't use my own driveway for 2 weeks?" She beamed. "Exactly. See, you're catching on." I opened my mouth, shut it, opened it again, then just turned and stormed back inside. This wasn't over, not by a mile. That night, I dragged myself to my first HOA meeting in years. It was every bit as awful as I'd imagined. Linda stood at the front of the community clubhouse, clutching a cheap microphone like she was delivering a national address. "As we push forward with these progressive community guidelines," she droned, "cooperation is key." I cleared my throat loudly. "Excuse me, question." Linda's face twisted like she'd bitten a lemon. "Oh, Mr. Carter, so glad you could join us." Yeah. Quick thing. Since when does the HOA get to seize private property?" A ripple of awkward shifting spread through the neighbors, most of whom looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Linda sighed, like she was humoring a slow learner. "Oh, Tom, you really should have read your agreement before moving in." "I did," I snapped. "And it doesn't say you can steal my driveway." She let out that patronizing little laugh that made my fists ball up. "It's not stealing, Tom. It's reallocating resources for the community's benefit." I turned to the other homeowners. "You're all fine with this? What happens when it's your driveway next?" More uneasy glances, a few shrugs that screamed, "We hate it too, but what can we do?" Linda flashed me a syrupy smile. "Don't be dramatic, it's just parking." The anger was boiling now. "Linda, I swear," she waved a hand. "Meeting adjourned. Let's all stay neighborly, okay?" I left knowing one thing. Reasoning with Linda was pointless. If I wanted my driveway back, I'd have to fight fire with fire. The next morning, I called a tow truck. The driver rolled up, ready to haul that neon pink monstrosity away. But just as he started hooking it up, Linda came barreling out of her house, bathrobe flapping, phone in hand. "I'm calling the police," she screeched. The tow guy glanced at me. Linda thrust her phone in my face. "It's illegal to tow a vehicle part of a community initiative." "That's not a real law," I said flatly. She smirked. "No, but it's HOA policy, and you signed the agreement." I gritted my teeth. "So I'm just stuck with random cars in my driveway forever?" "Oh no," she cooed. "You can file a formal reconsideration request. The board will review it at next month's meeting." I stared. "You've got to be kidding." She winked. "Patience is a virtue, Tom." The tow driver shook his head and bailed, clearly done with the drama. I was out of sane options, but not out of ideas. That night, I sat in my garage, nursing a beer and glaring at the Kia. My phone buzzed, A text from my old army buddy, Mike. Hey man, you still got that crazy restoration project from the base? I stared at the message, gears turning, a wicked grin creeping across my face. Yeah, why? No reason, just had an idea. I leaned back, cracking my knuckles. If Linda wanted to play dirty, I'd play dirtier. By bedtime, I'd made up my mind. I was getting my driveway back, with a tank. Once I decided, there was no going back. Linda had turned my driveway into a war zone, and if it was a fight she wanted, I'd bring the heaviest artillery I had, literally. I called Mike. He picked up after 2 rings. So you're really thinking about it? He asked, already in on the plan. I'm done being nice, I said. I want my driveway back. A pause, then Mike cracked up. You know this is nuts, right? Completely, I said. That's why it'll work. He whistled. All right, man. Got a way to move it. I'll figure it out. Just tell me it's still good. Good. Mike laughed. It's a beast. Needs some TLC, but it rolls. And it's legal. You made sure of that. He was right. The tank, an M60 patent, had been a forgotten project from our army days. I'd spent years restoring it, stripping the engine so it wasn't a working vehicle, just a big, scary chunk of steel. Legally, it was mine to own and park on my property. I spent the next few hours making calls, pulling every favor I had to arrange transport. Most companies laughed or hung up, but I finally found one guy crazy enough to say yes. By the next afternoon, it was set. The tank was coming. The day it arrived was pure chaos. The whole neighborhood lined their porches as a massive flatbed truck rumbled down the street, hauling the weathered but still badass M60. Kids ran out, pointing and yelling. Adults gawked, torn between awe and fear. Even the HOA's petty rule enforcers didn't know what to do. And then there was Linda, sprinting out of her house, mouth already running. What is that? She shrieked, her voice bouncing off the cul-de-sac. I crossed my arms, admiring my new lawn decoration as the truck backed it into my driveway. Just a little something to keep people from parking where they shouldn't. Her face contorted with rage. You can't be serious. I shrugged. Your rules, Linda. My property's community parking now, right? So I'm making sure it's respected. Her eyes bulged. You can't just put a tank in your driveway. I grinned. Oh, but I can. And I did. The driver gave me a thumbs up as the tank settled onto the pavement, its treads digging in. It was glorious, huge, menacing, and a total nightmare for anyone dumb enough to park there. I leaned against it, victorious. Linda was livid. This violates HOA rules, she yelled. I pulled out the handbook she'd used against me. Actually, it doesn't. Nothing says I can't park a historical display on my own property. She snatched at the book, flipping through it desperately, but when she found nothing, she let out a furious scream. It's a safety hazard. Nope, I said. Not operational, just a display, like that tacky fountain you stuck in the cul-de-sac last year. That was an upgrade, she snapped. And this, I said, patting the tank, is an upgrade to my driveway. Her jaw clenched so hard I thought she'd break something. I'll have this removed. Go ahead and try, I said. You'll see how legal it is. She stormed off, yanking out her phone, probably calling every lawyer and HOA crony she knew. I knew she'd fight back, but I'd done my homework. She had nothing. That night, the neighborhood was electric. People I barely knew shook my hand, laughing about how this was the best thing to ever hit our street. Even the quiet ones who usually cowered under Linda's reign were thrilled. For once, someone had stood up to her. But I wasn't naive. Linda wouldn't quit that easily. Sure enough, the next morning, a stiff, official-looking letter was taped to my door. I skimmed it. Same old garbage. The tank violated community standards like unsightly appearance, inappropriate military symbolism, and, my favorite, excessive noise pollution. I laughed out loud. Noise pollution? It didn't even run. The letter demanded I remove it in 48 hours or face a $10,000 fine. I crumpled it up. Linda was swinging hard, but she didn't know how stubborn I could be. I called Mike. They're trying to find me. He laughed. Of course they are. Think she'd just give up. I need to kill this before she makes it stick. A pause. Then Mike said, remember that historic preservation loophole? I sat up. The landmark status 1? Yup. If that tank's a historical landmark, the HOA's screwed. I grinned. Mike, you're a genius. Why you keep me around, he said. Get moving. You've got a tank to save. I jumped on it, gathering every scrap of the tank's history, filing for historic preservation status, and calling military history groups. It was a Hail Mary, but if it worked, Linda was toast. By sunset, I was feeling good, cautiously optimistic. Linda might have thought she owned the neighborhood, but she'd messed with the wrong guy, and I wasn't backing down. The next morning, I strolled out to my driveway, stretching as I took in the ridiculous sight of my tank casting a shadow over the pavement. For the first time in days, my driveway was clear. No cars dared park there overnight. It was almost serene. Almost. I didn't even get to enjoy my coffee before Linda came charging over, clipboard in hand, scowl locked and loaded. "You think this is funny?" she barked. I sipped my coffee slowly. "Not funny, Linda. Effective." She jabbed a finger at the tank. "This monstrosity is unacceptable. The boards had multiple complaints, and we're issuing an emergency removal order." I smirked. "Multiple complaints? All from you, I bet." Her eye twitched. "That's irrelevant. It violates standards." I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my emails. "Actually, Linda, I got word this morning. My preservation petition's approved. This tank's a historical landmark now." Her face went pale. "You're lying." I showed her the screen. She fumbled for her glasses, squinting at the official document, her breathing getting ragged. "This is a joke," she spat. "No joke," I said. "Your emergency order's worthless. The tank stays." She made a choking sound, half gasp, half growl. "You can't just twist the system like this." "Learn from the best," I said. "Didn't you mention fine print?" Her mouth flapped uselessly, searching for a comeback, but she had nothing. "I won't allow this," she hissed. "This isn't over, Tom." I sighed. "It's over, Linda. You lost." She spun and stomped off, practically shaking with rage. I watched her go, savoring it, but I knew she'd try something else. She always did. Sure enough, the next day, an emergency HOA meeting popped up. I didn't need to go to know what it was. Linda scrambling to undo my win. Mike and I sat in my garage, hearing the muffled arguments drift from the clubhouse. "Think she'll rewrite the bylaws?" Mike asked, tossing a beer can between his hands. "Definitely," I said. "It's her last play." We both knew Linda wouldn't accept defeat. If the rules didn't favor her, she'd rewrite them. But tyrants eventually overstay their welcome. As the meeting ended, something wild happened. A crowd of neighbors, more than I'd ever seen, gathered outside the clubhouse, muttering and shaking their heads. Mike nudged me. "Looks like you're not the only one fed up." Linda strutted out, smug as ever, thinking she'd locked in her power. But when she saw the crowd, that smugness wavered. An older guy, Mr. Jenkins, who'd lived here forever, stepped up. "Linda," he said firmly, "we're done with this." She frowned. "Done with what?" "You running this HOA like your little empire," he said. "The tank was just the tipping point. You've been pulling crap like this for years." Her lips twisted. "I do what's best for this community." "No," a woman shouted. "You do what's best for you." The crowd buzzed louder, nodding. "You change rules to suit yourself," Jenkins went on. "You fine people over nothing, bully anyone who disagrees, and now you tried stealing a driveway because you thought you could." She clutched her clipboard like a lifeline. "That's not true. I was following rules you made up," someone yelled. "You've made this place hell," another added. Linda's face went crimson. "I've kept this community running. If you don't like it, step down." Jenkins cut in. "We're sick of you." Her eyes widened. "What?" "You heard me," he said. "We voted you out while you were inside. Majority rules, you're done." Linda spun around, desperate for backup, but her usual cronies wouldn't even look at her. The tide had turned. "You can't do this," she sputtered, but they already had. She marched off, slamming her door so hard the windows shook. The crowd broke up, relieved whispers filling the air. Mike whistled. "Damn, I almost feel bad for her." I smirked. "Almost." A few neighbors came by, thanking me for standing up. It was weird being the accidental hero, but it felt good, not just because I'd won, but because people were finally pushing back. That evening, I sat in my garage, watching the sunset over my reclaimed driveway, chuckling at how a parking spat had sparked a neighborhood uprising. All it took was one tank. Linda hung around another week before moving out. I never saw her again. The new HOA leadership quietly scrapped her insane rules, and things finally felt normal. My driveway stayed empty. Nobody dared park there again.